We're channeling the latent powers of our third eyes and going face to face against strange monstrosities. That means we either finally tapped into the realm beyond with our fully functioning resonator, or we're playing Mitsume ga Tooru on this episode of Doki Doki Game Club. Game Club. Game Club. Hello and welcome to Doki Doki Game Club, a retro video game podcast. I am your host, Brandon Fincher, and I am joined today by my pineal peepin' pals, Frank Martin.
Pew pew!
Brian Grogan. And Mr. Joseph Lester. On Doki Doki Game Club, we each take a turn choosing a particular title from video game history, and we announce the selection online so everyone can play along at home. From there, we have 2 weeks to spend with the title, at which point we reconvene to dig into the ins and outs of the selection. Today's pick was made by Joseph, and that title is Mitsume ga Tooru for the Nintendo Family Computer. Mitsume ga Tooru was originally released for the Famicom in Japan back in 1992. It was developed by Natsume, published by Tomy, and unfortunately never made its way to the West. Alrighty, boys. So, Mitsume ga Tooru. We've got this crazy game that Joseph has produced from the annals of Japanese history.
I went back in time and created it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I'd like to know what you guys know about this game prior to playing it.
Oh, man. Well, since I picked it, I'll just start and say that I knew absolutely nothing about it before I started it. In fact, I knew when I saw it, I said this. I had to look it up and to find out that it was based on something. And even when I did, I didn't notice at first that it was based on a manga by Osamu Tezuka, who made he's the god of manga, who made like Astro Boy, Phoenix, Metropolis, and a bunch of other series. And then I was like, why don't I know about this? You know? Like, it seems
Shame
like
on you.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those titles of his that never really made it out over here. So
Right.
It's understandable then that we never got this game, which is a shame because from right when I saw it in someone was playing it, I think on HEDQ, and I said, that looks fun. So let's play it on here.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you mentioned the manga creator that originally created the designs and stuff. I guess, well, so he did a manga, and then they made an anime, and then they made,
Yes.
okay, so that's the kind of the succession of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm familiar with Blackjack because of its anime, and then, of course, everybody knows Astro Boy.
Yeah.
I had never heard of this myself, and it's funny that you mentioned AGDQ, because that was the first time that I became aware of this, and I don't know necessarily that I talked to any of you guys about this, but I just remember watching it like at random because it was one of the shorter runs, and I think I watched it like after the particular event had aired on YouTube. Yeah, and I will say that runner's experience playing the game is very different from my own. But we'll jump into that a little later. So how about you, Frank? Did you have any exposure to this?
No,
in any of its forms?
No, none. I've never even seen the character. Like I tend to believe that I'm somewhat well versed in like old school manga and anime. I don't know. It just never came up. I have no idea who this person was. I mean the character, obviously the author and artist. I knew who they are now.
And it doesn't even seem like something that's very well been brought over by fans.
No, and it's not like it's not in pop culture like Astro Boy is. You know what I mean? Like you can find Astro Boy anything, but this is like it seems like it was maybe not as popular. Well, obviously not as popular, but maybe not as big as of a hit over there.
Right.
So at least big enough to get a game. So
I'm interested to watch the anime myself because when kind of setting up the social media stuff, I came across several images and I thought it looked pretty good. I mean, I like the art style and. Yeah, it looked interesting. The anime actually makes me think, Joseph, do you know if, I mean, obviously Crunchyroll probably doesn't have any access to it. Otherwise, you would have probably dove right into that. But is that something that is available
No,
widely?
it doesn't even seem like it's been brought over with like fan subs. You know,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Like even on YouTube, if you look at clips, they're usually subtitled in a different language. And I know you can at least go on there and watch the opening, which is I definitely recommend everyone go on YouTube to watch the opening because the song is catchy as hell.
I'm definitely gonna be putting it somewhere in here.
Yeah. But no, I don't think no one's brought it over officially for sure.
Strange. Yeah, that's boy, that makes me even more curious.
Well, it's kind of interesting too, though, because it wasn't a short-lived series. It ran for like 4 years in Weekly Shonen Magazine, and it had like 13 volumes total. And then there was I think like almost 50 episodes of anime.
Oh wow!
Produced based on it.
Wow.
Well, we'll have to get into the plot a little bit, at least of what we're capable of kind of piecing together based from the internet and the game. And I have a feeling there might be some details in that might explain why it's not quite as popular as something like Astro Boy. But before we move out of here, I'm curious, Brian, did you have any exposure to this in any of its forms?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen maybe screenshots of the sprites of this game, and maybe some box art, but I have never cracked it open. I'd never heard. I hadn't seen the ADGQ that you guys were talking about, so it's completely fresh to me.
You're like my resident AGDQ guy. Like I trust you to find all the best ones, so I'm surprised to hear that. You should definitely see it because, like I said, I can't imagine any of us played this game a first time through casually in the way that this guy plays it.
Oh, there's no way.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, it's insane. But yeah, we'll dive into that in a bit. So yeah, unless anybody has anything else about the history of the game or the intellectual property, I'd say it's probably time for the
Back of the box.
Red Condor, Flash, the Third Eye sees all, a climactic battle for the ages. As Terry Johnson, you've been bequeathed the ultimate power of the Three-Eyed Ones. It's not all fun and games, though, especially when the nefarious Prince Albert, an ancestor of Johnsonite, wants to harness the power for himself. He'll do anything to stop you, even if it means putting Terry's best friend Wendy in danger. It's up to you to traverse 5 heart-stopping stages, armed with the power of the Three-Eyed Ones and your trusty spear, Red Condor. Blaze through the heart of the city, rumble through the relentless jungle, battle in the evil pyramid and the catacombs beyond. Brave the abandoned ship that haunts the harbor. Prevail in Sodom, Terry's greatest challenge yet. And above all else, defeat Prince Albert once and for all.
All right, so you have that beautiful westernization of the plot to Mitsume ga Tooru, courtesy of our very own Mr. Joseph Lester, who has spared no effort in his mastery of the Japanese language. So, Joseph, since this is your pick, the burden of proof falls to you. Please tell us, what is the game summary for Mitsume ga Tooru?
Okay, to sum it up briefly, take a manga character that's relatively unknown in the West and give him a Mega Man-style platformer, complete with swappable weapons and an interesting mechanic in the form of the Red Condor Sphere, and you have Mitsume ga Tooru.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a fair assessment to
And
me.
I should probably mention that just so people know, the names are those are the localized names.
As in localized to our podcast.
Yeah, localized to exclusive to DDGC and not anywhere else or otherwise official.
Okay, well, let's dive right in. I'm interested in maybe fleshing out that plot just a little bit. So there is a fan-translated version of the ROM for this game floating on the internet by famous translator, ROM coder. I'm not quite sure what his official title would be, but if you're a fan of old video games and you've played some ROMs over the years, you might recognize the name Spoony. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Spoony or Mrs. Spoony, Miss Spoony, was responsible for translating this as best they could. Did you guys play the English version or I guess the English translated version of this game?
I did.
I did not.
No. So I will say that it more or less falls in line with what Joseph's back of the box says. You've got the main character, Terry Johnson. Spoony has chosen some different names. It's creative differences. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can call him Hosuke Shiraku if you want to, but that seems kind of like a disrespectful to my localization.
It's true.
It's a little
don't be offensive.
It's a little backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got a character, this beautiful bald-headed guy with a third eye. And what I was capable of gathering in my limited research for preparation on the show, you've got this character. He is a mystic of some sort of sorcerer supreme kind of a guy,
Sure.
with a third eye that when the eye is open, he has, I guess, ultimate power. He's got some sort of intense power. In this game, it seems mostly focused around that spear and some sort of projectile blast. But if the eye gets covered or closed, then he has a personality shift, and he's like a timid, mild-mannered guy. But when it's open, he's a bit of a jagoff, for lack of a better term. Yeah, so I mean, reading about that, it was something that made me even more interested in the anime, because that sounds like a funny dynamic of like him constantly trying to like peel a Band-Aid off of his forehead.
And you can tell that in the story, or probably especially in the regular series, that his friend Shioko is always trying to put the Band-Aid back on.
Yeah. She likes the nice guy, and then he just wants to be a bad dude. And yeah.
Well, if I could shoot lasers out of my eye, or I guess my forehead, I would definitely always want to have that power available to me.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you don't hold me down, Shioko. You know? Yeah.
She just wants to have a nice supper, but I want to go blast some locals.
Exactly. I want to blast naked pink-haired guys as they hop across the landscape, right?
Yes.
Speaking of those guys, they're goblins, right?
I thought they were trolls, like troll dolls.
Honestly, I thought Troll Doll too. I had no reason to believe that, other than the fact that they were naked and had spiky pink hair.
Well, the boss,
that thought crossed my mind.
The first boss, his name is like Goblin King or something like that.
Is that the first or second boss? That's the guy in the
first,
temple with the stone, like giant stone idol. Because
Yeah.
when you beat him, the English translation says something to the effect of like, you've defeated the Goblin Boy.
Yeah, Goblin Boy. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
He's not Jareth. He's just a goblin.
He's
boy.
not. He no relation whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that's why it makes me think that they're goblins. I don't know. Maybe.
Could be. Yeah. See, one more reason to watch read that
anime,
manga
yeah.
or watch that anime.
Yeah.
I'd really like to know, like, is it just them little slice of life anime where they're just like dealing with this guy's powers, or is there some sort of
Supernatural,
hell unleashed?
yeah.
You know. Yeah.
It's one bald boy against all the troll dolls and small puppies you can imagine.
Yeah, those puppies that just bark at you and then they drop coins when you smack them.
Yeah.
It's true. That's like real life, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to bring up, of course, this kid looks exactly like Tien Shinhan from.
Yeah,
It's like him mixed with
So-
Krillin.
Yeah. When I was playing,
Well, exactly, mixed with Krillin. Exactly.
yeah,
That's what
when I was
thinking.
playing this game
Large head and all.
on because I played the game on stream. Some people watching were like, "Oh, is that Krillin?" And then I was like, "Well, not so much."
And you're like, no, it's Mitsume Tooru. Get it right.
Yeah, come on, noobs. Oh.
Well, so what can you really say about like the overall design of this game? I mean, that Joseph didn't already cover. I mean, it is a platformer. I guess in the Mega Man style is probably fair. I mean, It's a run and gun action shooter.
Yeah.
With the one unique mechanic, which I just want to dive right into because I think it's definitely one of the more interesting parts of the game, and it also makes me think of another kind of obscure Japanese game in Gimmick, or Mr. Gimmick, where you have the ability to launch a projectile, in this case the Red Condor Spear, which is the thing you start with right away, and you can launch it. It does more damage than the traditional projectile that
It's
he shoots.
double damage, I think.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't.
Wow, I never used it
Me
as a
neither.
weapon.
Oh yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
You can
Okay.
like
Wow.
you can basically kill a boss in seconds if you
Aim it
are able to
perfectly.
get it in their weak spot and stay and keep it there.
Oh, so like within the sprite for each of the bosses, there's a weak spot, or is it just kind
Well,
of
no. I mean,
anywhere
like
you can hit them?
I mean, like like if you have to hit a boss in an eye in their eye or something, then
Okay.
I was watching one of the speedruns, and what he was able to do is, so when you launch the spear, it basically shoots out and then turns around and comes back toward you.
Mm-hmm.
And at any point in its projection, you can jump on top of it, and it basically
stop.
becomes like a trampoline, and
yeah,
it stops
okay.
in midair. So, but what you can do is, while you're stopped on top of it, you can actually charge it up again and launch it from a higher vantage point.
Right.
And then you can keep climbing up, so you can actually get it right inside a hitbox, and then jump on it to bounce it and keep it there, and it'll stay there and keep doing damage.
Wow. See, it's funny because I know for a fact now that you say that the guy in AGDQ does a ton of that, but I've had completely forgotten about that detail. I just remember him using that as like a navigational device way more than the game requires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do a lot of cool stuff with it that you don't think to do when you actually play the game. Because I think if you just play this without seeing any kind of video beforehand, you're not going to make much use of the spear at all, except when you have to jump up to a high ledge.
Yeah.
Right.
Rarely, because
without watching the video, any sort of video at all, I wouldn't have known the spear existed. Until I would have gotten to this one area where you couldn't progress without it, and I would have been like, okay, well, what's going on?
For me, I didn't watch any speedruns or AGDQs or anything, and then the first thing I did when I grabbed it, I shot. And I was like, okay, so it's Mega Man. Let me do a charge shot, because obviously that's the first thing that I thought I'd do. And I just saw the spear, and I was like, okay.
And then you're like, what?
Well,
it's funny.
I thought it was absolutely useless at first, because it was like, well, it turns around, so I'm not going to be able to use it as a projectile. But then I jumped on it, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense, I suppose. So I never really thought it did damage. I thought it was just a trampoline thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as far as discovering the ability to do that, I've seen the video. It's been long enough to where I had forgotten basically everything about it. Even when Joseph was like, we're going to play this game, I was like, what is this game? I have in my mind, I'm just thinking I have
what
no
is
idea
Joseph getting us into?
Yeah, right. There's some crazy, strange Japanese game. But the thing that triggered the memory of the Condor Spear is that throughout the game, as you travel, you occasionally come across some unnamed female shopkeeper who will sell you things. And
I assumed that was Chiyoko, but I don't know why she's there.
I don't think it's Chiyoko, because Chiyoko in all the cutscenes and then at the end of the game, she's in white and green. She has like a green dress on with like a little white top, and and in this character looks a little more like militaristic. She's got like, kind of like a blue fatigue sort of thing on. But yeah, so you come across this character. She's placed throughout the map, and you collect coins from enemies that you've killed, and you can spend them on unlocking new weapons.
Which you lose when you die.
Yeah.
Which you lose when you die, and then getting health refills, extra lives, and a very strange mechanic in this game is this kind of golden phoenix type of bird character. So at first, like, the game doesn't do a great job of explaining it, even the translated version. But essentially, when it comes to platforming in this game, if you fall down a pit, if you have one of these things like in your inventory, you'll consume it, and then a phoenix flies down and pulls you out of the pit and takes you back to the nearest previous platform.
If you play on easy, which is what I did, I think it's always there. I don't think it goes away.
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I always had it, and I thought it was maybe because they play tested and it was hard, so they put it in. So people...
Yeah, on normal, it's a single-use
kind
of item.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Strange that speaking of easy, that the default position for this in the menu is easy. So it's like easy on the left and normal on the right, but it starts you with the cursor over easy.
Was this game, was the manga and anime, was that geared towards kids?
Yeah.
That might be
it
why.
was in like a a shonen magazine, so it's like for boys.
So that's probably what the idea was. Like, let's put easy out front.
Sure.
And then,
But you know what? I took that to mean, hey, default, I'm just going to press easy.
Yeah.
To start with.
Well, you were the last person I was expecting to say that, because I know that you're, if you see that word normal, that you're clicking on that.
Well, I did, but I thought, at least for my first playthrough, I would just like to see what it had to offer,
Right.
And then I went back and played through normal.
Yeah, this game is thankfully fairly short. I mean, it's about as long as a platformer should be, I feel. Yeah. And I did the same thing. I played through it from front to back on easy, and then I went back and played through on normal. And honestly, I don't know if I just wasn't paying very close attention, but I didn't see a lot of difference. The platforming doesn't change. The enemy health doesn't change.
It might just be that Phoenix thing.
Maybe it's just
that's so strange. Yeah, maybe.
Which is funny because I don't even think the platforming is that hard.
That's not that bad. Yeah. I mean, there's a few places that kind of
we can talk about the specific ones later, but like there are definitely a couple where I was just like, okay, this game's getting thrown in the trash.
Well, and also it has this like really aggressive pushback when you get hit. Like you kind of float in the air for a long time, so it's kind of like it messes your rhythm, so you'll fall.
But you know what? At least it's not as bad as a Castlevania knockback.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Because you only fall maybe a pixel or two
it doesn't knock you back far, but it takes a long time, it feels.
Yeah.
I think, it's the length of time that really got to me. Like, it's just like I just sat and like literally like my controller fell as I'm waiting for, the game.
Especially if you get juggled between like a couple of enemies, you're gonna stay there for a little bit of time.
Yeah, it was more of an inconvenience than anything because even you have a decent amount of health in this game too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's very forgiving. Like I said, even on the normal, and it's too bad. And I don't know if modern games have spoiled me, but I kind of wish that there would have been like some sort of veteran or hardcore mode like unlocked after that, like once you beat it on normal. Because I mean, with the exception of just a few spots near the end, and I mean, there's definitely like the challenge level does ramp up, kind of strangely enough, like a little bit like a Kirby game. Where the game just like totally throws you a softball on the first couple of stages, but then as you go through, once you get to that final act, it gets a little more tough.
Maybe they could have made you play with the advantage over your third eye.
I suppose I could always just I could self-impose some difficulty. Never buy any of the upgrades. Actually, speaking of upgrades, I think this is a good opportunity. Pretty neat, I think, at least the idea of you've generated an economy in this game by having enemies that drop coins, right? And so in order to give you something fun to do with those, you've put a shopkeeper in. Again, very traditional. And then you have these weapon upgrades. And as opposed to being something like a Contra game where if you die, you lose them, and then the only way to get them back is just to find them throughout a level, which a bunch of games do. This game, has you go to that shopkeeper and use that currency. So I thought it actually was definitely an example of a game that I felt encouraged to kill all the enemies and to get as many coins as I could, in order to keep.
Yeah, I don't think.
And let's talk about the coin mechanic too, if there's a good chance for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't know this, but you guys knew. Maybe it's because you guys watched AGDQ, but if you hit coins with your power, your beams enough, I guess they evolve into bigger coins.
Yeah, you have to juggle them, and I think it's every 4 hits they become a higher currency. Yep. So you only have if you have the smallest coin, which is what
20
10 or 20, 20. So if you have that at first, you're only going to be able to upgrade it to maybe like 2 tiers above that at most before it flashes away. Yeah. But, if you get like the second biggest coin, you'll be able to upgrade it to $500 worth, which is great because every upgrade costs 1,000. Extra health costs 200 and extra life costs 5,000. So the more you can get and just have in stock, the more trivial the challenge of this game becomes, but not in a bad way.
No, definitely not in a bad way. And it's neat because it's giving you an option to make the game easier that requires a bit of effort on your part. Which I think is really like a smart way to do it. It's like, you have to consciously do this you can essentially farm coins.
More or less,
which I think is kind of neat. More or less.
But I don't know if you guys know what happens in the normal mode, but I know in easy mode, if you die, half your coins get taken away.
Yeah. Same thing with normal.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was maybe a little bit more punishing in the normal mode, but
I actually didn't even notice the coins being taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think I picked it up towards the end of my second playthrough. But yeah.
Well, sorry, not like die, but I mean
trivial.
like continue. Like if you,
continue. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah. I know that's what you meant. Yeah. I'd actually like to put a little more light on that Condor Spear that he comes with, because I really think that is a cool mechanic that not a lot of other games have. And I had mentioned Mr. Gimmick earlier, and I'm going to briefly elaborate on that a bit. So in Mr. Gimmick, to anyone that hasn't played it, or just Gimmick if you want to call it that, you have a little guy, shoots a star out. It's very Kirby in its aesthetic style. But this star that you launch out, you can ride it around and get yourself to difficult platforms that you couldn't otherwise reach. And it's the only game that comes to mind that has a similar approach, because that star will also, you can use it, you can like shoot it and then pick it up and launch it at enemies, and use it as a weapon device. But also use it to navigate the map. And it's a lot of fun. And I think, especially in the case of Mr. Gimmick, it's utilized thoroughly because of the way that the levels are designed. But this one backs off on that a little bit and doesn't give you quite as much as I would have liked.
Well, the level design is pretty bare bones. Like it doesn't really do too much on anything. I think there's one level that has like these pillars that come up from the ground, or like there's one little kind of auto scroller where you're on a little boat and then
and there's the little elevators that are kind of Mega Man style where they rise up when you step on them.
For sure.
to launch you toward the spikes.
But most of them are not volatile. Like maybe one or two are. And
Right.
it's I felt like maybe it was for kids, so it was a little bit maybe toned back, but it left a little bit to be desired on, at least for me. So I don't know about you guys, but
No, I would agree. I would say that the level design overall is not particularly exciting, especially when some of these stages like cover a fairly long distance from left to right. And so you end up with these sections of a somewhat long stage that just require you to just sort of hop around, and you're not really like. I guess some of the best platform stages have some sort of gimmick to them where you feel like you're moving around. Like take Mario, for instance. You hop down a pipe, you go to another room underneath, you come back out on the other side, and you've obviously skipped a portion of the stage. So that sort of sense of exploration would have been cool. And there's really not a whole lot of that in this game.
I don't even think there's any secrets or anything, is there? I mean, other than
There's invisible
yeah, I was
chickens.
gonna say that the gulls or the chickens or whatever, but other than that, I don't think there's anything, right? Like secret places and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's no like
secret rooms
hidden wall meat or anything like that.
No, the only real reward is more coins. Like you said, when you find the hidden bird or whatever, that gives you a bunch of huge $500 coins.
Yeah, and
or 100, whatever
from
it is.
From watching a speed run, it's great farming for big coins because you just put your spear there and then they kind of bounce on it. And then
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, there is one fork in the road at the very last level that right before the end boss, like you can go one way to get to the. So there, it's not really a secret, but I think if you do some sort of, there's some sort of platforming or something that if you get up to the go upward, that's
you
kind
can
of
go
secret.
up
And
or
you get to a
right.
shop, yeah,
Right.
right. So
yeah, I guess
that's something.
there was at the end. There's something that I thought they were going to do is a boss rush mode, but they didn't. I thought they were going to have like doors that you go in and have to do like boss one,
Right.
boss two,
Yeah.
boss
That's
three.
very Mega Man, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that whole like black doorway with the
Yeah.
bar, like the glowing neon bar field over it.
I was kind of let down because it's just 2 or 3 bosses that are exactly the same. Where it's just like shoot the eye and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, despite how simple that is, I actually think that stage was, or that boss encounter was fairly neat because you've also got. It would have been cool if they would have added like one more attack or
something.
some sort of
Yeah.
or something to it. But as far as it stands, like there is what we're talking about. So you have this sort of mother brain stationary boss with a giant eye and a electric field that moves from left to right, keeping you moving around. And so depending on what weapon you can approach that. Hitting that eye in a different way, but you're constantly moving and attempting to dodge this thing. If there would have been some annoying enemies sort of like buzzing around or like some sort of tentacle situation coming off the machine,
something to make you not just wait.
yeah, or something just giving you 2 obstacles to have to dodge would have like taken the difficulty up a bit, and then would have also, I think would have made it a little more fun overall. But as it stands, you just kind of like shoot the field until it breaks of the the little, I don't know, the electric wall that moves back and forth, and then you hop in the one spot and just blast it. But I mentioned the idea of approaching boss encounters in particular from different perspectives, and we talk about the different items that you can unlock through the shop in the game, and I did think that was pretty cool in this game where you've got the different types of attacks that you can earn in this game. Aside from the red condor spear, you've got your default Mega Man-esque sort of pea shooter, and then you've got one that you can change the trajectory of, which I thought is fun to play with. Then you've got one that kind of covers a wave field in size, and then one that's like a great big,
it's like a tri-laser.
Yeah, tri-laser, exactly.
I wonder if the what was it in Super Metroid, the wave beam? No, not the wave beam. I think it's called tri-beam, right?
Well, I mean, tri-beam like shoots out like the way that the rightmost. I guess I can't, because we have no idea what these things are called.
Yeah,
in the menu
eye
when
lasers.
you're selecting it. Yeah, the tri-beam.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering if the tri-beam in Super Metroid was influenced by that one.
Oh man, yeah, I wonder. It's tough to even gauge like the popularity of this game in Japan.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of reminds me, even though it's like not the same game at all. It reminds me of Moon Crystal the most out of all the games we've played.
I could see
Okay.
that.
Just
What makes you say that?
Just like I thought, there is a simplicity in some ways to not to the level design, and Moon Crystal was a little more complex in its
Right.
obstacles, but I still felt like it kind of reminded me of a mix of that and Mega Man, I guess, for lack of better words.
I think the aesthetics are a little bit more like Moon Crystal.
Yeah. I mean, it might be. Yeah, it's kind of like a hybrid between the two stylistically. Obviously, it doesn't have that same kind of animation that really makes Moon Crystal
No.
stand out.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, it also might just be because it's an obscure Japanese platform. So-
Yeah, I kind of wonder, like if it's not just like a thing in the back of our heads, because I mean, the vibe is there. I get what you're saying with the vibe. I don't think of them as being the same type of game, or I don't see like too many like tangible comparisons. But yeah, there's definitely something. It's like, okay, here's this pretty good, weird Japanese platformer that I've never heard of before that doesn't play anything like the other, but it's like, yeah, it's just something about where it comes from that,
Yeah.
and that's why I say I can't, I can't rightly say that it's not because of my, this sort of concept I have of strange, Famicom, NES era games coming from there that we just never got.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Moon Crystal reminds me of like Crystalis a little bit. I don't know if you guys played Crystalis at all.
Is that because of the word crystal?
No.
Yeah, honestly, is that because of the word
Wondering.
crystal? Because Crystalis is like a completely different perspective, right? That's
Different
sort of like a-
perspective, but I feel like the character design is very similar.
okay.
But anyways, that's for the other episode. But but this game reminds me more of like retro. I was gonna say Retro City Rampage, River City Ransom, or
And that's because of the
interesting.
coins.
the coins, and also the kind of
The big heads.
Yep,
the chubby,
big heads.
the chubby
That would've-
character, and when he gets hit, he kind of looks like those guys that when they barf. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
His like eyes kind of like
yeah,
get
and
wonky.
he
yeah.
like falls backwards. Like it's very similar to that.
Yeah. A fun game, but definitely it's no River City Ransom. I just want to go ahead and put that out there now.
No,
in case
no,
anybody's
it's no
listening to this
River
going,
City
Oh yeah, I
Ransom."
love River City Ransom. Yeah. Well, Frank, you mentioned playing it through on easy. And Joseph, you said you started with easy, but then went to normal.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, and Brian, please chime in too. The overall difficulty of this game. Do you feel it was sufficiently challenging? Because I kind of come from the perspective of I would have liked it to have been a little more challenging, a little earlier on, and not so
Yeah.
much like let's wait to the end when the bosses just kind of grind you.
For me, it was not a hard game. And I'm not gonna lie, I used the turbo button and
I wish I was about to plug in my NES
Yeah.
Max. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
let
because
me,
the bullets don't seem to go as fast as, let's say, like a Mega Man, so it
Right.
felt a little slower. So I was like, let's go turbo. Like
That's why I always use the third power up, the one that shoots really fast.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
great, but like if I lose it or something, I'm like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So but so I use I was on a time crunch. I used save states, but I had to use save states a lot actually, like because of
Yeah.
just random stuff happening, like more like hazards than anything else. Like the one that I can remember the most is there's a place where there's a platform, it's by the end, and then it crumbles underneath you, but you have to put your what was it, the red
yeah.
spear, whatever it's called.
Yeah. the
Red condor, and then you kind of have to use it as a jump pad to go over, but you have to do like a special jump that they don't really teach you how to do. And I had never used it prior, but there's like a medium height jump and then a super jump, I guess you would call it. But to get the time,
Yeah, it's like a trampoline.
yeah,
Like
and I couldn't get the timing right, and
Yeah, it's a little wonky.
it was like, do I have to give myself like some momentum? So I tried all sorts of different things, and it took me like a good 5 to 10 minutes to get it right. But I kept falling into the spikes. There's no safety net underneath, so you die. So
Right.
then I would have to, start over with the save state, save over with the save state, and it was just like over and over and over.
Frank, I'm going to feed your your earlier question about the tri-beam inspiring Super
Sure.
Metroid, and I will also recall a certain wall jump that also has really weird timing. So maybe.
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
there's one thing that I enjoyed and the most out of this game, and I don't know if it's a Mega Man that inspired it, but do you guys remember those little cubes that had eyeballs that would like go upwards?
yes,
in
yeah.
the Mega Man
No,
games?
no,
Yeah.
no,
in this
in
game.
in this. When you walk into the room and there's those blocks and they have eyes, and when they open, they fly up toward the spikes.
And they push you
have to
upwards?
kinda,
Yeah.
Oh, right.
You know,
yeah.
I don't know that I know exactly the platforms that you're talking about. I don't know that I recall that they had eyes on
They
them.
do.
Yeah, they're like closed,
open.
and then they open up with little cartoon eyes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
They come alive one way
Yeah.
or another.
Maybe you should have opened your eyes while you played, Brandon.
Apparently, I must have had a Band-Aid over my third one.
But it super reminded me of like the yellow demon, like
Yeah.
a lot.
Yes.
Because I think they're yellow too. So
Yeah, they are.
Or kind of the reverse of, what was the Castlevania 3 with blocks?
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I thought that was really cool. And I wish that was more prominent in this game, where they would have like little puzzle rooms like that.
Yeah,
But
for sure. Yeah, I mean, you get just a taste of that in one of the later stages where, you know, you get a little more verticality and you can kind of like, you know, hop around, and you've got to use that thing to make your jumps. But for the most part, and even in that area, I mean, I used the red condor and then like would use it to get from one spot to the next. But if you time your jump just right, you don't even need it. I mean, there's really only just like a couple of moments in this game where you need that to clear a tall wall. And like Frank just mentioned, and yeah, I don't know. I think
you do need it to get across that pit of spikes, though, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, you know, and so like they
Right.
give you a bunch of it all at once, and
Yeah.
that's a little bit like whoa, like you know, you've got the ceiling coming down, there's spikes attempting to kill you, and you gotta get just the right spot.
there's something
to avoid
sucking you
those,
towards the
vacuum
spike.
cleaners.
Yeah. So one thing that I thought was crazy that I wish I had known when I played it, as from watching another speedrun today, is that, so you know how, so to set the stage, there's this area where a spike ceiling comes down and it goes up again, and then like spikes drop down, and there are these things that are trying to suck you into a pit of spikes. So after you pass a couple pits, there's one that's too long to just do a normal jump over, so you're like, okay, time to use red condor. But what you have to do is you have to charge it, and there's a fairly long window of charging for this thing.
Yeah.
So like you kind of have to do it at the first second you get, shoot it across, and then hope you have enough time to jump on it before the spikes come back down again. But what I didn't even think to do is that this player charged it earlier, and then but aimed it behind
Oh
it.
yeah.
So then,
yeah.
then he
Oh,
just
wow.
like I was like, I never thought of doing that, and then just like waiting for it to come forward and jumping
Oh
across. on
yeah,
it.
man, I constantly did that.
Oh man, I felt so stupid when I saw that.
Yeah. And I think that might have been one of the few things that like really stuck in my mind, that was how that player in the speedruns and stuff did it. Yeah, but if you shoot it, it kind of like yo-yos out one way or the other. So yeah, you can buy yourself a little time to like get ready to make the jump if you shoot away from the direction that you want to travel, and so it shoots out and then comes back the opposite direction, and then you get the
And
opportunity.
it always
hop
looks
onto
cool
it.
when you pull off those spear jumps. I just think it's a cool looking, like at least the ones that go across a gap. The ones where you jump up on like a trampoline aren't that exciting, but yeah, I just think
Right.
I really wish they had done that more.
Yeah.
That bounce is pretty
Yeah.
satisfying.
Yeah, it really
Yeah,
is.
for sure.
And like,
Bounce on
if this would be your first platformer, it wouldn't be interesting. But I think coming from like Mega Man's and like Ninja Gaidens and stuff like that, having that mechanic is so refreshing. It's so different that like I was like very impressed with it. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's like I said, I liked it enough to really wish that there was more there.
Yeah.
And it's not even like that's not even a slight to the game. Like this game sucks, and I needed something to improve it. It's just like you've shown me what you've built into this game, and that it's a very good thing, and that just throw a little
Yeah.
more in there.
Make
You
it-
know,
Well, Brandon, I was thinking about you while playing it, because did you notice that the spikes are pretty forgiving, unlike Little Nemo?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing about that. The spikes are not forgiving like Little Nemo. The problem with those spikes is that, you have a massive hitbox in this game, and that's actually a good opportunity for us to talk about, because there are plenty of sections in this game where, I mean, you can really, really stick that sprite into the enemy sprite without taking any damage. And like the thing that comes to mind is, I want to say it's stage 4, where the game introduces these sort of bullet-shaped pink enemies, and there's a part where they go up and down in a classic sort of side-scroller fashion, where like you have to time the rate at which you move through them, but there's a little space between them, so you've got an opportunity to like avoid the first one and then get between we'll call them purple bullets, the first and second purple bullet, and then if you notice, or at least with me, like it's almost always like several pixels into that pink thing as it fell down. And it's like, so you really have to be hit. If you're being hit from above, you've got to be hit
Square,
like, in the
yeah.
middle of that sprite.
So it's actually your hitbox that's forgiving and not the obstacles.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you know how I feel, like the sides of spikes should never damage the enemy. It's only, like design your game to where you're coming at the point and don't make the side thing an issue. But yeah, anyhow, I digress.
Because you can stick your head into those spikes and you'll be fine. But if it goes to your eye, you're dead.
Yeah, like if you walk into them, it'll cause you harm, and it did with me a couple times. But yeah, interesting that, I mean, and maybe that's a thing too. I mean, I know that that's certainly something that a programmer has to consider when they're developing this type of game, is where the detection is for the damage input. So,
but I'm pretty sure if it would have been the actual size of the sprite, it would have been a little bit too hard, I think, because he's pretty big.
Probably.
He's pretty big.
Yeah, and that goes back to our assumption earlier about, this was an IP designed for kids, and the default is easy, and so on and so forth. So that probably played into it.
I want to bring up a subject that's not just to this game, but to a lot of stuff. Is why are Japanese people so into Easter Island?
Man, I had that same thought when we were playing the game. I was like, those Moai heads or whatever.
By the way, those are in the anime intro, so that means they're a really big deal here.
Wow. Yeah, that's weird. And it's like I mean, are they still that way? I don't consume a lot of Japanese pop culture nowadays.
No, I think it was like an 80s
and 90s thing. Yeah, maybe it was like
Gradius.
Maybe a lot of articles got written about it back then, and it was kind of new and interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like, this would make the perfect enemy for all of our NES games.
Yeah, I mean, if I would have, if I was a good host, I would have done a little research and found out when that whole thing, Easter Island, was discovered, and like when it became like a popular thing.
There's actually in
alas.
Super Mario Odyssey, there's a enemy that you can transform into, or I guess become, that looks like an Easter Island head. Now that I think about it,
right?
Yeah.
They're back, baby.
A bunch of stuff.
Yeah, they're back. You're making a comeback.
Well, I don't know. I feel like we've kind of chewed into this pretty good. Is there any other details about the overall game?
The music.
The music, yeah. The one last thing I was going to mention is, to me, the best part is the soundtrack, because it is, I would have to say, it is heavily influenced by, if not the same composer that did Shatterhand, because it's the same company, so they use the same instrument sets, and it's a great soundtrack. Like, it's...
Does anybody have the release date for Shatterhand compared to this one off the top of your dome?
No, not off the top of my head.
I've got it off the top of my keyboard.
Well, I think it's worth taking a look, because
it was published in 1991.
Interesting. So that's a year prior to the release
and
of this.
And he was one of the composers on it, so
there
there's
you
the
go.
answer.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
not top build. Yeah,
It was him and
I was actually good.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, actually, it felt to me more like Chojin Sentai Jetman, like kind of a lighter.
Same composer.
That same composer. Yeah,
Yep,
the same style.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
It's Hiroyuki.
It did sound exactly like Jetman. Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys, fans of earlier episodes, especially our guest appearance from Joe Shea when we covered Pocky and Rocky 2, he's also the composer of that. So, he moved on to the 16-bit world.
Oh, yeah, he did all the like the Power Ranger games and stuff.
Oh, okay, which also has some good
great
game music
tunes.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he's
Wild
quite
Guns.
accomplished.
He did
Did we mention his name?
We did not, and I was just about to say it. Hiroyuki Iwatsuki.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Definitely an accomplished guy, and I'm with you. Like this soundtrack is great, and it could use a few more songs in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
sounds
recycles
weird.
a couple.
Yeah, it recycles them, and I wish it weren't so. I wish it was a little more unique, one after the other.
But man, it has one of the best. Has such a classic first stage song that's like a great opener song, and the last stage song slaps like crazy. That's so good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome. Even if you're listening to this and you don't think you're going to get around to playing the game, definitely seek out that soundtrack. I have to imagine that there's a YouTube rip of it, or
there is
on the NSF file. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a little break here, and we'll come back and sort of wrap this whole thing up. Okay, before we get into our final thoughts, I believe we had a 5th honorary Doki Broki give Mitsume ga Tooru a spin over the weekend. Joseph was out of town, and he had a little meetup with one of our youngest fans. So let's check in with 6-year-old fan Max Schledelzink for his official review on Mitsume ga Tooru.
First, what's your name?
Max,
And what do you think about the game with the 3 eyes?
well, he can shoot. Oh, no.
Do you like it?
Yes, I do.
What's your favorite part about it?
Shooting.
And what do you think? What do you think his third eye does?
Well, shoots.
Yeah. So, if you had to give this game 120 stars, what would you give it? Out of 120 stars.
I don't know.
Okay. And that's your official review of Mitsume ga Tooru for the Famicom by, what's your name again?
Max.
All right, by Max. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Max, and your thorough analysis of Mitsume ga Tooru. So that leads us to the rest of the gang here, and I'd like to know, as we do, your pro and con, your rose and your thorn, your favorite thing and least favorite thing about this game. So let's start with Frank.
Let's start with the bad first. So I didn't particularly enjoy the level design and the kind of pacing of the game. I felt like it was a slow start, then it kind of went okay at the end, but then it died off really quick. And then it was kind of lackluster that way. But there was a lot of good parallaxing effects in some of the levels. I found that really cool.
Oh yeah, we didn't really talk about that.
Yeah, so you can obviously see that it's a late 90s, like late game in the NES library. Like it's pushing the limitations a lot more than earlier games. And the soundtrack is one, I didn't know it existed, and then it just opened my ears to another great NES soundtrack. So pumped for that. So I would give it 3 eyes out of 5.
All right. How about you, Brian? What do you got?
So like we've mentioned before, I really wish they put more thought into doing things like mandating that you do things with the Red Condor. Like, that's such a great mechanic, and if they actually forced you to use that in interesting ways and change the levels up with more verticality, that would have been great. On the upside, it is it's fun, it's easy to pick up, and it's pretty well drawn and everything. So I'll give it again 3 schoolgirl shopkeepers out of 5.
All right, Joseph, that leads us to you.
All right. I'll start with the pro. The music is a total hidden gem, and I really love the design of Hosuke, aka Terry Johnson. and I like the design of some of the bosses and enemies too. I thought there were some that stood out above others, and the stage clear illustrations are incredible.
Oh yeah, we didn't really give the aesthetic of this game a fair shake, but
that's okay.
It's definitely one of the.
It'll encourage more people to try it for themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's also just a lighthearted game with some decent replay value and a few especially fun areas worth mastering. As for the cons, I really wish they had designed more of the game around the spear mechanic and tightened that aspect up in general. The challenge is in timing your jumps, bounces, and hits, so I don't think it needed as big of a wind-up as it has. And this is one of the few reasons I wish this had a direct sequel. So I'll give this one 3.5 beautifully bald, 3-eyed baby boys out of 5.
Very good. All right, my final thoughts. We've talked about that spear mechanic to death, and you guys had tended to lump its sort of shortcomings into your least favorite aspect of the game. But I'm just so into that I think it's a pro that it's even there in the first place. So I do love the soundtrack. And that's probably a close second on my favorite element. But just that Condor spear, is it's such a neat idea that the fact that they made it at all, deserves to be praised. As far as the downside, I definitely think that the game is maybe just a little too easy. Especially early on. So I am definitely a fan of difficulty ramping up at a more a more fluid, and take it up nice and quick and give us some ups and downs, and this game doesn't really do that until towards the end. So that's, it kind of makes the overall experience a bit jarring. So much like the other guys, I'm with you on the 3 out of 5, and I'm going to say this is 3 out of 5 golden glowing chickens. All right, that brings us to the ability to obtain this game. So where can people get their hands on it? You're going to have to find either a ROM, as we mentioned earlier, or a copy of the Famicom disc. If you happen to head over to pricecharting.com, a loose cart of this runs you about $67.80. Complete in box jumps way up. $259.40 was the last sold price. Wow. It looks like. And if you happen to find a brand new in-shrink in the box, you're looking at $562.74.
Wow. We're back, baby.
We are back. Those ballers at Doki Doki Game Club have played another expensive one. All right. Well, without further ado, I'm going to say it's time for
Doki Doki Power Line.
That's right, it's Doki Doki Powerline, where we plug you into the source for the hottest gamer tips and tricks. The winner of this episode's Powerline Pro Tip comes from the ever-helpful Chiyoko.
Hi, Chiyoko here. I'm going to tell you how to level select. At the title screen, hold the A and B buttons on the second controller and press the following buttons on the first controller. A, 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 B, 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 A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Yay! Go get him, Terry!
Okay, and that brings us to the point in the show where we announce next episode's title. So normally this would fall to Frank, and we're still going to get to Frank's next selection, but before we do that, we've got a wild card. That's right, we're going to be talking about Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon, available for all modern consoles, PS4, Xbox One, PS Vita, Switch, 3DS, and PC. So unless you're a complete troglodyte and you've got a modern game console, you should be able to get your hands on this. Rest assured, though, this is definitely a retro game in the truest sense of the word. So we will be talking about that on the next episode. And that concludes episode 15 of Doki Doki Game Club. Before we throw our spears towards the sun and hop off into oblivion, I want to thank my fellow jocular trioculars for joining me today. Who are you guys, and where can people find you?
My name is Frank Martin. You can find me on Twitter at Hios_IO and on Twitch at Hios_.
And I'm Brian Rogan. You can find me on Twitter at KenOShinobi. Also, check out my Dark Souls item description bot at Item Description.
I am Joseph Luster. You can find me on Twitter at Moldylux. The website is subhumanzoids.com, and you can listen to my other podcast, Subhumancast, which just recently had milestone 2 episodes go up within rapid succession of one another, so something weird's going down.
And if Twitter is your thing and you'd like to follow me personally, I am Genocide over there, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Doki Doki GC. In addition to that, we're practically on every other social network online as well, so search for Doki Doki Game Club all across the World Wide Web, or head over to dokidokigameclub.com for further details. Thank you once again to everyone who continues to tweet about us using hashtag DokiDokiGC, or shares a link to the show on Facebook. You're the pop-up shop that crops up like a rest stop right when you're about to drop. And last but not least, we have a Patreon. So if you have a couple of bucks you can spare, and would like to show us your support in that manner, you can head on over to patreon.com/Doki Doki Game Club, where we have some pretty neat rewards available to anyone interested in supporting us in that fashion. So, on behalf of Brian, Frank, Joseph, and myself, thanks for listening. And until next time, adios, Battletoads.